My fiancé abandoned me just before our wedding, leaving me broken and desperate. With no choice, I became a live-in nurse for a paralyzed billionaire. But on the very first night, I stood frozen in shock at what I saw. I arrived at William's mother's house for what I thought was wedding seating arrangement discussions, but Victoria Pemberton answered the door wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one William had said went missing last month. Behind her, I could see my wedding invitations spread across the coffee table, a red pen crossing out my name and writing hers above it. "Linda," she said with a smile that belonged on a shark, "William thought it would be easier if I explained the situation to you. The pearl necklace had been my only inheritance, the single valuable thing my grandmother left me before cancer took her when I was 12. William knew its history. He'd held me while I cried about losing it, even helped me file a police report for the supposed theft. Now it rested against Victoria Pemberton's collarbone like it had always belonged there, catching the light from the crystal chandelier in his mother's foyer. Where's William?" My voice came out steadier than my hands, which I kept pressed against my purse to hide their shaking. "He's upstairs with Mother Hamilton reviewing the prenuptial agreement." "Well, our prenuptial agreement." Victoria stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter as if she were already the lady of every house connected to William's family. "Come in. We have so much to discuss." The living room I'd helped decorate for last Christmas still held the throw pillows I'd selected, but everything else had shifted into enemy territory. William's mother, Eleanor, sat in her wingback chair sipping tea from the china set she'd deemed too valuable for me to use. Beside her sat Marcus Pemberton himself, the pharmaceutical titan whose donations kept half the city's medical facilities operational. "Linda," Eleanor said without standing, without even the pretense of warmth she'd barely maintained during our 4-year relationship. "This is for the best. You must see that." 3 weeks. We were 3 weeks from the wedding I'd spent a year planning, and they'd gathered like a tribunal to inform me of my replacement. The wedding invitations I'd addressed by hand because Eleanor insisted it showed proper breeding were spread across the coffee table. Victoria had already crossed out Linda Marie Carter, and written Victoria and Pemberton, in blood-red ink above it. "William and I have been working closely on the Pemberton Medical Technology Initiative," Victoria explained, settling onto the sofa where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners trying to earn Eleanor's approval. "Our partnership evolved naturally. These things happen." "These things happen?" I repeated, my voice finally cracking. "We live together. We have a venue booked. We have a life." "Had," William's voice corrected from the stairway. He descended slowly, carrying a manila folder that I recognized as the same type he used for patient discharge papers. Even now, 3 weeks before our wedding, he wore the Tom Ford suit I'd bought him for his promotion to attending physician. He looked exactly like the man I'd fallen in love with, except for his eyes. Those had gone cold in a way I'd never seen, not even when he'd lost patience. "Everything's been arranged," he said, setting the folder on the coffee table beside our defaced invitations. "The apartment lease transfers to me next week. Your belongings will be packed professionally and placed in storage. The wedding venue has been notified, though we're keeping the date for different purposes." Different purposes. They were keeping our wedding date for their wedding. The realization hit me with such force that I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. "The ring," Eleanor added, gesturing at my left hand where William's grandmother's heirloom diamond caught the afternoon light. "It needs to remain in the family." My fingers moved to protect it instinctively, this symbol I'd worn for 18 months. But William was already extending his hand with the patience of someone who knew he'd already won. "Linda, please don't make this harder than necessary," he said, using the same tone he employed with difficult patients. "The relationship has run its course. Victoria and I share professional goals, family connections, and a vision for the future that aligns more naturally." "When?" The word escaped before I could stop it. "When did you decide this?" Victoria laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking champagne flutes. "Oh darling, these things aren't really decided. They just become clear. Though if you must know, William and I have been working together for about 2 months on the neural interface project." 2 months. I thought back to all the late nights William claimed were emergency surgeries, the weekend conferences that suddenly required his attendance, the mysterious charges on our joint credit card for restaurants I'd never been to. The signs had been there, written in a language of betrayal I'd been too trusting to read. Your morning routines were always so predictable, William said, his clinical assessment of our life together cutting deeper than any scalpel. 5:30 a.m. wake up, breakfast at 6 o'clock, the same rotation of meals. The same conversations about hospital politics. The same, everything. I removed the ring with hands that belonged to someone else. Someone who could stand in this room full of people who'd planned her humiliation and not scream. The diamond made a small clicking sound as I set it on Eleanor's side table, next to her teacup that cost more than my monthly salary. The storage unit key will be messenger delivered to Dorothy Martinez's address, William continued, consulting his phone as if I were an item on his to-do list being checked off. I assumed you'd go there. You always do when things get difficult. Dorothy. My foster mother, the only real family I had, reduced to a predictable refuge in William's calculations. He'd mapped my destruction down to where I'd run for comfort. Is there anything else? I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Marcus Pemberton stood, adjusting his Italian suit jacket. There is the matter of discretion. The medical community is small, and we'd prefer this transition happen without unnecessary drama. A clean break benefits everyone. Especially your daughter's reputation, I said, looking directly at Victoria. Taking another woman's fiancé 3 weeks before the wedding might raise questions about her character. Victoria's shark smile widened. Oh, Linda. No one's taking anyone. People simply end up where they belong. William belongs in a different circle now. Surely even you can understand that. The cruelty of it was so precise, so surgical. They'd gathered not just to end my relationship but to ensure I understood my place, or rather my lack of one, in their world. The pearl necklace at Victoria's throat seemed to pulse with my grandmother's heartbreak. Another generation of dreams strangled by those who could afford to steal them. The hospital's schedule has been adjusted, William added, never one to leave logistics unaddressed. You won't be working my surgical shifts anymore. Dr. Harrison has agreed to reassign you to the night rotation in pediatric care. Less chance of awkward encounters. They'd thought of everything. My home, my work schedule, my dignity, all carefully excised from William's life like diseased tissue. I stood in Eleanor Hamilton's living room, surrounded by people who'd orchestrated my removal with the same attention to detail I'd given to planning the wedding that would now showcase Victoria's victory. If that's everything, I said, turning toward the door with whatever remained of my spine intact. One more thing, Victoria called out, fingering my grandmother's pearls with deliberate slowness. These really are exquisite. William has such good taste. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything I'd thought my life would be. 3 weeks before my wedding, I stood on Eleanor Hamilton's porch with no ring, no home, no fiancé, and no idea that this public execution was actually my liberation. The drive from Eleanor Hamilton's house blurred past my windshield while my hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to leave marks. 20 minutes to reach the apartment William and I had shared for 2 years. 20 minutes to process that my entire life had been surgically removed while I was still breathing. The parking garage's fluorescent lights flickered as I pulled into my designated spot, right next to William's empty space where his BMW usually sat. Of course he wasn't home. He was probably at Victoria's penthouse, toasting their efficient disposal of me with champagne that cost more than my monthly student loan payment. The apartment door opened to darkness and the smell of William's cologne lingering in the air like a ghost. I flipped the light switch to find him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows we'd picked together, still wearing his scrubs from the morning shift. He didn't turn around when I entered, just stood there looking out at the city lights as if they held answers to questions he hadn't bothered asking. "We need to talk," he said to the window, and those 4 words made my knees buckle even though I already knew what was coming. The scene at his mother's house had been Act 1. This was the finale. "I think your mother and Victoria covered everything pretty thoroughly," I managed, setting my purse on the console table where our engagement photo still sat in its silver frame. William finally turned, and his face held the same detached expression he wore when delivering terminal diagnoses. No emotion, just clinical fact. They shouldn't have done that. I wanted to handle this myself. How considerate. The sarcasm felt like armor, thin but necessary. He reached into his laptop bag and produced a manila envelope thick with documents. Everything about William required documentation, evidence, paper trails that proved his efficiency. "I've handled all the logistics. The lease transfers to my name exclusively next week. Your name has been removed from the joint accounts as of this morning. The wedding venue was cancelled 48 hours ago, along with the photographer and caterer. 48 hours ago. While I was addressing save the dates in my careful cursive, practicing my new signature, Linda Hamilton, he was already erasing our future with the same methodical precision he used to excise tumors. The moving company arrives tomorrow at noon, he continued, sliding the envelope across our dining table where we'd hosted dinner parties, where I'd helped him study for his boards, where we'd planned our life together over takeout and wine. Everything will be professionally packed and placed in a storage unit. First month is paid. How generous. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from somewhere outside my body. Victoria and I share something you and I never could, he said, and for the first time, emotion crept into his voice. Not regret or sadness but excitement. Her father's connections will fast-track my career in ways that would take decades otherwise. The department chair position is essentially guaranteed by 35. The Pemberton Medical Technology Initiative will revolutionize spinal surgery. This is bigger than personal feelings. Our wedding is in 3 weeks, I said, the words automatic, pointless. He corrected. And that date will serve a different purpose now. The venue was too good to waste. The cruelty of his efficiency took my breath away. He'd transferred our wedding to Victoria like a dinner reservation, swapping brides with the casual indifference of changing a surgery schedule. I need the ring back, he said, gesturing to my bare finger. You already gave it to your mother. The one you were wearing. Grandmother's original setting. I'd switched rings after the meeting at his mother's house, putting on the original heirloom setting I'd worn before Eleanor insisted on modernizing it. My last act of defiance, keeping this one piece of our history. But William knew me too well, anticipated even my small rebellions. My fingers fumbled with the platinum band, shaking so badly I dropped it. The ring hit the granite countertop with a sound like a gavel pronouncing sentence. I placed it carefully beside the envelope, fighting the urge to throw it at his head. Thank you for your clarity, I said, the words scraping my throat raw. William pocketed the ring with the same automatic motion he used for his phone, already dismissing its significance. He actually checked his watch then, as if I were making him late for something more important. I have evening rounds, he said, moving toward the door. I suggest you pack efficiently. The movers won't wait if you're not ready. The door closed with a soft click that echoed through the apartment. Our apartment. My apartment for exactly 6 more days. I stood frozen in the living room for minutes or hours. Time had lost meaning. Then, mechanically, I walked to our bedroom and began the archaeology of betrayal. Every drawer I opened revealed another layer of deception. Restaurant receipts from Marquesse's where we'd planned to hold our rehearsal dinner, except these were dated weeks ago with charges for 2. A Parker pen from Pemberton Pharmaceuticals tucked into his sock drawer. Victoria's business card in his medical journal, the corners soft from handling. The closet held my wedding dress like an accusation. Vera Wong, ivory silk. A small fortune I'd justified because you only get married once. The tags still attached, the receipt in my name alone because William had insisted I should have the dress I wanted. Now I understood, he'd been ensuring the debt would follow me, not him. I pulled suitcases from the top shelf and began folding my life into compartments. Each item held memory shrapnel. The blue dress I'd worn to his white coat ceremony. The fleece pajamas he'd bought me during my first winter in the apartment when I'd complained about the cold. The jewelry box that held the pearl earrings he'd given me last Christmas, claiming they were new when I now recognized them as pieces Victoria had probably discarded. By the door I found boxes William's mother had pre-labeled with her perfect penmanship. Linda kitchen items, Linda personal documents, Linda miscellaneous. She'd prepared for my removal weeks ago, maybe months. Every box labeled like evidence in storage, reducing 4 years to categorical items that could be efficiently removed. At 2 a.m. I opened my laptop to face financial reality. The checking account showed $247.83. The wedding deposits, venue, photographer, flowers, catering, totaled $15,000, all non-refundable according to contracts William had encouraged me to sign quickly to secure our dates. My credit cards were maxed from bridesmaids' gifts, the engagement party I'd thrown, the honeymoon flights I'd booked as a surprise. My previous apartment had been rented 6 weeks ago when I didn't renew the lease. William had said it was silly to pay for a place I never used. Every financial decision had been choreographed to leave me with nothing when he made his exit. I sat on the floor of our building's lobby at 3 in the morning, surrounded by boxes labeled with my name like evidence of a crime, scrolling through apartment listings that might as well have been written in a foreign language. Studio apartment, first and last month required, credit check mandatory. Every listing a door slammed in my face before I could even knock. My phone screen blurred through tears I refused to let fall, and then Dorothy Martinez's name appeared in my recent calls, the last person I'd spoken to before my world imploded. My thumb hovered over her number for a full minute before shame gave way to desperation. She answered on the second ring, voice clear despite the hour. "Linda? What's wrong, sweetheart?" The sob that escaped me told her everything. "Can I come over? I'm already putting the kettle on." Dorothy's townhouse sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees, the kind of neighborhood where people still knew each other's names. She opened the door before I could knock, wearing the same flannel nightgown she'd worn the night she first took me in as a foster child 15 years ago. Without a word, she helped me carry boxes into her spare room, the one with Noah's Ark wallpaper that had witnessed a parade of broken children before me. The room smelled like lavender sachets and old books, exactly as I remembered. A new quilt lay folded on the twin bed, price tag hastily removed but corner still visible. On the nightstand sat a frame with a photo from my nursing school graduation, Dorothy beaming beside me in my cap and gown. She'd thought to make space for me before I even knew I'd need it. "Tea first, explanations later," she said, leading me to her kitchen where copper pots hung from hooks and herbs grew in mason jars on the windowsill. She pulled out the chipped blue mug she'd designated as mine when I was 13, the one with a hairline crack that somehow never leaked. The chamomile tea tasted like safety, like all the nights she'd sat with me through foster care nightmares and teenage heartbreaks. "William left me for Victoria Pemberton," I said, the words falling like stones into still water. "The wedding's off. I have nowhere to go." Dorothy didn't gasp or offer platitudes. She simply opened her arms and I collapsed into them, sobbing into her nightgown while she rocked me with the practiced comfort of someone who'd raised dozens of children who weren't hers but somehow were. Her refrigerator, I noticed through my tears, held my favorite brand of strawberry yogurt. The bathroom had a new toothbrush in purple, my preferred color. She'd been preparing for my return like a prophecy she'd hoped wouldn't come true. "Stay as long as you need," she whispered into my hair. "This is your home. It always has been." For 3 days I existed in a grief cocoon, barely leaving the guest room except for meals Dorothy insisted I eat. She didn't push for details, didn't offer advice, just brought me soup and sat quietly while I stared at job listings on my laptop. My savings wouldn't cover a security deposit anywhere decent. The hospital had already adjusted my schedule per William's request, relegating me to night shifts in pediatrics where we'd never cross paths. On the third evening, Dorothy knocked softly and entered carrying tea and a folder. "My cousin Marjorie called from Hartman Placement Agency. There's a position that's been open for months. It's unusual." She set the folder on my bed and the number on the compensation package made me blink twice. $15,000 a month, plus accommodations, meals and benefits. More than triple my hospital salary. "What's the catch?" I asked because there was always a catch. "The patient is Nathaniel Blackwood." Dorothy's expression grew careful. "The tech billionaire who had that skiing accident 8 months ago. He's paralyzed and he's difficult. 4 nurses have quit in 2 months. One lasted only 3 days." I recognized the name from business headlines William used to read aloud over breakfast. Nathaniel Blackwood, the prodigy who'd built a medical technology empire before turning 35. The same age William planned to make department chair with the Pembertons' help. "They say he's impossible," Dorothy continued, potentially violent in his frustration. "Completely isolated in that mansion of his in Westfield Heights. But Linda, the money would set you up for life. 6 months there and you could start over anywhere. Running away. That's what this was. But staying meant watching William and Victoria's ascent from the shadows, meant accepting the night shift relegation, meant existing in a city where every street corner held a memory of what I'd lost." I picked up the folder and dialed the number before I could reconsider. The interview was scheduled for the next morning at Margaret Harrison's downtown office. The building's lobby gleamed with the kind of marble that whispered old money, and the elevator to the 42nd floor moved so smoothly I barely felt it. Margaret Harrison's office looked like it had been carved from a glacier, all clean lines and cutting edges. She herself matched the decor, steel gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her features, charcoal suit pressed with military precision. "Miss Carter," she said, not standing, gesturing to a chair across from her glass desk. "I've reviewed your credentials. 5 years of nursing experience, specialization in trauma care, excellent references from Helena General. Tell me why you want this position." "I need to disappear," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. "My life here has become untenable." She studied me with eyes that missed nothing. "Personal crisis? Financial trouble? Legal issues? My fiancé left me for Victoria Pemberton 3 weeks before our wedding. I have no home, no savings, and no desire to remain in the same city where they're building their empire." Something shifted in Margaret's expression, so subtle I almost missed it. "The Pembertons. Do you have any ongoing connection to that family?" "Only that they destroyed my life." She was quiet for a long moment, then slid a contract across the desk. "Mr. Blackwood requires absolute discretion. No visitors to the estate. No personal calls during duty hours. No discussion of his condition or recovery with anyone ever. He's brilliant, bitter, and will test every boundary you have. He doesn't tolerate pity, sentiment, or weakness. Can you handle that?" I thought of William's clinical dissection of our relationship, his mother's pre-labeled boxes, Victoria wearing my grandmother's pearls. "I can handle anything that doesn't involve the life I just lost. Sign here." I signed without reading the fine print, without asking about the other nurses who'd fled, without questioning why a billionaire's estate manager seemed to recognize pain like my own. The contract felt like a door closing on one life and opening onto another. The next morning, a black town car arrived at Dorothy's house. She hugged me goodbye, pressed a photo of us into my hand and whispered, "You're stronger than you know." The drive to Westfield Heights took an hour, winding through neighborhoods where houses grew progressively larger until they weren't houses anymore but estates, compounds, small kingdoms behind gates and walls. The Blackwood estate appeared like something from a fever dream, all glass and steel angles that seemed to reject the softness of the surrounding hills. The gates opened silently, admitting us to a driveway that curved through gardens so precisely maintained they looked artificial. Margaret met me at the entrance, her expression giving nothing away. "Your suite is in the east wing," she said, leading me through corridors where our footsteps echoed despite thick carpeting. "You'll have privacy but remain accessible. Mr. Blackwood's rooms are directly adjacent." The suite was larger than any apartment I could have afforded, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a valley that seemed to exist in a different world from the one I'd left. A king-sized bed, a sitting area, a bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people. It was beautiful, cold, and felt like an expensive prison. Margaret handed me a keycard, a pager, and a final warning. "He'll test you immediately. Don't take it personally." Margaret left me standing in my suite with those words echoing in the silence. I set down my single suitcase, the pager heavy in my pocket, and walked to the adjacent door that connected to Nathaniel Blackwood's rooms. The mahogany door stood like a barrier between my old life and whatever waited beyond. I knocked twice, received no response, and entered anyway. Margaret had been clear that waiting for permission wasn't part of the protocol. The room beyond took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the western wall, late afternoon sun painting everything gold. Modern furniture in blacks and grays created sharp lines against the warm light. Original artwork hung on the walls. I recognized a Rothko, though I couldn't be sure it was genuine until I remembered whose house this was. Everything whispered money, but underneath lurked something else. Isolation. Bigger. A life interrupted. Nathaniel Blackwood sat with his wheelchair facing the windows, his back to me, shoulders rigid beneath an expensive black sweater. Even from behind, his presence filled the space with a tension that made the air feel thin. I cleared my throat to announce myself, but he spoke without turning. "Another one? Margaret's getting desperate if she's pulling from the discount bin now." The casual cruelty might have stung if I hadn't spent the last week being systematically destroyed by people I'd trusted. Instead, I moved further into the room, my footsteps deliberate on the hardwood floor. "I'm Linda Carter, your new nurse." He spun the wheelchair with surprising speed, and I understood immediately why the other nurses had fled. Nathaniel Blackwood was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Dark hair that fell just past conventional, gray eyes the color of winter storms, cheekbones that belonged on classical statues. But his expression transformed that beauty into a weapon. Pure disdain radiated from him, the kind of contempt that came from pain transformed into armor. "Tell me," he said, voice cultured and sharp as broken crystal, "what tragedy sent you running to this position? Divorce? Death? Financial ruin? Or are you one of those noble types who thinks caring for the broken will fill the void in your empty life?" "My fiancé left me for Victoria Pemberton 3 weeks before our wedding." The words came out flat, factual. "So yes, I'm here because I have nowhere else to go. But I'm also here because I'm excellent at my job, and frankly, Mr. Blackwood, your bitterness doesn't intimidate me." Something flickered across his features. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. He studied me with those storm-gray eyes, and I refused to look away. "Victoria Pemberton," he repeated slowly. "Marcus Pemberton's daughter. The pharmaceutical princess. The same. And you're what, looking for revenge? Planning to steal medications? Or just hiding from your humiliation?" "I'm here to work. Your emotional state isn't my concern unless it affects your medical care." He laughed then, sharp and humorless. "My emotional state? How clinical. Did they teach you that phrase in nursing school, or did you pick it up from whatever man decided you weren't worth keeping?" The words should have hurt. Would have, maybe, if William hadn't already used up my capacity for that particular pain. Instead, I pulled out my tablet to review his medical files. "Your medication schedule shows you're due for evening doses in an hour. I'll need to do a full assessment first. Vitals, range of motion testing, skin integrity check." "I refuse." "That's your right. I'll document your non-compliance. You'll leave." They all leave. He maneuvered his wheelchair closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion beneath his anger, the muscle tension that spoke of constant pain. 3 days. That's my bet. You'll last 3 days before you run back to whatever life you're trying to escape. Your last nurse lasted 6 days according to the files. She cried on day 2. I don't cry anymore. That's been trained out of me recently. Our first medical examination became a battle of wills. He resisted every assessment, challenged every procedure, questioned my competence with medical terminology most nurses wouldn't know. But I'd spent 5 years in trauma care, had dealt with doctors who tested nurses for sport. Every challenge he threw I met with calm precision. "Your blood pressure is elevated," I noted, removing the cuff. "Pain level. Irrelevant. I'll document it as severe then. You don't get to assume. Silent suffering is still suffering, Mr. Blackwood. And untreated pain impedes recovery." He went quiet at that, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Finally, as I prepared his evening medications, he said, "You're not crying yet. That's unusual." That night, sleep wouldn't come. The mansion's silence felt alive, pressing against my ears like water. My suite's luxury felt surreal after Dorothy's modest guest room, after the apartment I'd shared with William, after every small space I'd inhabited. At 2 in the morning I gave up on sleep and decided to explore, to learn the layout of this glass fortress I now called home. The east wing hallway stretched longer than seemed possible, doors leading to rooms I had no business entering. But then I heard something that shouldn't exist. The sound of exertion, metal against metal, labored breathing. The sound came from behind a door marked private, but privacy had died with my old life. I pushed it open. The gym beyond was state-of-the-art equipment that belonged in rehabilitation centers, not private homes. And there, between parallel bars, stood Nathaniel Blackwood. Actually stood. His arms trembled with effort, sweat soaking through his gray t-shirt, but his legs, his supposedly paralyzed legs, bore weight. He took one agonizing step, then another, face contorted with pain and fierce determination. He sensed me before I could speak. His head snapped up and the fury in his eyes was volcanic. "Get out," he snarled. "Get out now." But I recognized something in that rage. The same desperate need to control your own story that I'd felt packing my life into boxes, signing contracts I hadn't read, running to this mansion to hide. This wasn't about me seeing him. This was about being seen at all. "How long have you been hiding this?" I asked softly. "Leave. No. Or I'll have security escort you out." Your medical files say paralysis from T6 down. But you're bearing weight. You're taking steps. He lowered himself into his wheelchair with practiced efficiency, chest heaving. My medical files say what I want them to say. Why hide recovery? This is incredible progress. His laugh was bitter. Because the moment people know there's hope, they expect miracles. Complete recovery. And when that doesn't happen fast enough, when progress stalls or reverses, they leave. His voice dropped. Everyone leaves. The words hung between us in that pre-dawn gym. Nathaniel still breathing hard from his secret exercises while I processed what he'd just revealed about everyone leaving. I wanted to tell him I understood, that abandonment carved wounds that never quite healed, but the sound of car engines in the driveway shattered the moment. Multiple vehicles arriving before 7 in the morning. Nathaniel's expression shifted from vulnerable to granite. Get my chair positioned by the window, he commanded, all trace of our earlier connection gone. And you need to disappear. Take the service hallway. Through the gym's small window, I glimpsed a convoy of black sedans pulling up to the main entrance. Even from this distance, I recognized the lead car's vanity plate, PMB001. My blood turned to ice water. That's Marcus Pemberton's car, I said. Nathaniel was already transferring into his wheelchair with practiced efficiency, erasing any sign of the progress I'd witnessed. He's early. The meeting wasn't supposed to be until 9. He looked at me sharply. You know him. His daughter stole my fiancé. Something dangerous flickered in Nathaniel's eyes, but there was no time to explore it. Margaret's voice crackled through the house intercom system, professionally neutral but with an undertone of warning. Mr. Blackwood, your morning appointments have arrived. They're requesting immediate audience. I slipped into the service hallway as instructed, but curiosity won over caution. Instead of returning to my suite, I positioned myself where I could observe the main reception room through a crack in the servant's door. What I saw made my knees nearly buckle. Marcus Pemberton entered first, his presence filling the space like an occupying force. 2 lawyers flanked him, carrying briefcases that looked heavy with bad intentions. His assistant, a nervous young man, immediately began rearranging the room's furniture as if preparing for a corporate takeover. Then Victoria glided in, wearing a cream designer suit that probably cost more than my annual salary had been. Her perfume reached me even through the door crack, something French and aggressive. But it was the last person who destroyed me. William followed them in, wearing an Armani suit I'd never seen, carrying a medical briefcase I recognized all too well. He moved with a confidence I'd never witnessed during our 4 years together, as if proximity to the Pembertons had transformed him into someone who belonged in their world. He was playing a role I didn't recognize, or perhaps this was who he'd always been, waiting for the right stage. Margaret wheeled Nathaniel into the room with deliberate slowness, his blanket positioned to emphasize his supposed helplessness. The transformation was remarkable. The man who'd been taking steps minutes ago now appeared completely broken, shoulders slumped, expression vacant. Nathaniel, Marcus boomed with false warmth. You're looking, well. Marcus. Nathaniel's voice was flat, deliberately weak. This is unexpected. William stepped forward, extending his hand with professional sympathy that made me want to scream. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Dr. William Morris. I've been consulting on your case for the Pemberton Medical Division. Your progress reports make for interesting reading. Through the crack, I watched Nathaniel shake William's hand. The same hand that had once worn my engagement ring, that had held mine while making promises he'd never intended to keep. Nathaniel's expression remained neutral, but I saw his other hand clench slightly beneath the blanket. I wasn't aware my medical records were being shared, Nathaniel said. William's smile was practiced, patronizing. The Pemberton Foundation has a vested interest in spinal cord injury research. Your case could help thousands with the right resources behind it. Marcus settled into Nathaniel's favorite chair without asking, a power move that wasn't lost on anyone. Let's skip the pleasantries. You have technology that could revolutionize spinal cord treatment. We have the infrastructure to bring it to market. Your current condition makes active leadership challenging. My condition doesn't affect my intellectual property rights, Nathaniel replied. Victoria laughed, a tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Of course not. But it does affect your ability to develop and implement. Daddy's offer is generous, considering. Considering what? Margaret asked from her position behind Nathaniel's chair. Considering that Mr. Blackwood's recovery has plateaued, William interjected, opening his medical briefcase to pull out files that shouldn't exist. According to my assessment, the paralysis is permanent. Motor function below T6 shows no improvement potential. The board needs to consider whether someone in this condition can effectively lead a medical technology company. Every word was a lie. I just watched Nathaniel walk. My hands shook with rage as William continued his false testimony, violating every medical ethic he'd sworn to uphold. Through the serving window that connected to the kitchen, I caught Nathaniel's eyes for just a moment. He'd heard everything. He knew what William was doing. Marcus pulled out contracts, spreading them across Nathaniel's coffee table like an invasion map. The terms are simple. We acquire your patents for $15 million. A fair price considering your inability to develop them further. You retain a ceremonial position, of course. Everyone wins. $15 million for technology worth 10 times that, Nathaniel observed. Worth that much in the right hands, Marcus corrected. Your hands, unfortunately, aren't what they used to be. I retreated to the kitchen, my nursing training taking over. If they wanted service, I'd provide it while listening to every word. I prepared coffee on the silver service, my hands steady despite my racing heart. As I entered through the staff door, William didn't even look up. I'd become invisible to him the moment I'd stopped being useful. Your coffee, Mr. Pemberton, I said, my voice carefully neutral as I served. Victoria glanced at me dismissively, the way she'd look at furniture. Through the kitchen's pass-through window, I continued preparing refreshments while their conversation grew more predatory. The offshore structures are already in place, Victoria mentioned casually. The Cayman accounts can receive the patent transfers within days. And if I refuse? Nathaniel asked. Marcus's smile was cold. Then we proceed with the competency hearing. Dr. Morris's testimony about your permanent incapacity would be quite compelling. The board would have no choice but to appoint alternative leadership. He's too broken to fight back, Marcus said to his lawyers, not even bothering to lower his voice. The board will side with active leadership over a man who can't even stand. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the silver coffee pot. These people, William included, were trying to steal everything from Nathaniel while he was vulnerable, just as they'd stolen everything from me. Through the serving window I caught Nathaniel's eyes again. This time he held my gaze deliberately, and I saw the same fury I felt reflected in those storm-gray depths. The silence that followed Marcus Pemberton's threat stretched through the mansion like a held breath. After they left, their cologne and cruelty lingering in the air, Nathaniel dropped his act completely. He propelled his wheelchair to his study with violent speed, and I followed, watching the fury radiate from his shoulders. They brought your ex-fiancé to assess me, he said, voice low and dangerous. To lie about my condition. William's always been good at lying. I just didn't see it until too late. Nathaniel turned to face me then, and something in his expression had shifted. Tell me everything. About him, about Victoria, about when this started. I sat across from him in his study, the desk between us covered with the contracts Marcus had left behind like a taunt. William started changing 2 months ago. Late nights that weren't surgeries, weekend conferences that didn't exist. I thought he was stressed about the wedding. 2 months ago, Nathaniel repeated slowly. That's when they approached me about the first buyout offer. When I refused, they must have started planning alternative strategies, including removing me as an inconvenient witness to William's ethical violations. They orchestrated your abandonment to clear the path for this. His hands clenched on his chair's armrests, using your pain as a tactical advantage. That night, as I helped with his stretching exercises, I broke every professional boundary I had left. The timeline matches perfectly. William started consulting for them right when he began pulling away. Every dinner he missed, every excuse he made, he was planning this with them. Nathaniel's hands stilled on my wrists where I was supporting his arm rotation. William Morris. I should have connected it sooner. He's been feeding them my medical information for months. They think you're weak, I said. They have no idea what you're capable of. His response was quiet, dangerous. Then they've forgotten who I was. And they have no idea who you are. We spent the next week transforming his study into a war room. Margaret provided access codes she definitely wasn't supposed to have, and we began excavating digital trails. I found William's communication with Victoria dating back 4 months, messages that predated his proposal to destroy me. Removing obstacles appeared in an email dated 2 weeks before he ended our engagement. My removal had been scheduled like a surgery. Nathaniel discovered shell companies in the Cayman Islands, corporate structures designed to hide the theft of his patents. But the most damning find was an email from Marcus to his lawyers. The crippled genius is ripe for harvesting. His nurse seems compliant. No complications expected. Compliant, I said, tasting the word like poison. They have no idea, Nathaniel replied, and when our fingers brushed reaching for the same document, neither of us pulled away. 2 weeks before the board meeting, everything changed. During our 4 a.m. session, Nathaniel took 20 consecutive steps without the parallel bars, using only a single cane. The triumph on his face broke something in me, and tears came for the first time since William's betrayal. Not tears of sadness but of fierce joy. He caught my hand, steadying himself against my shoulder. "We're going to destroy them," he said, but the way his thumb brushed my knuckles suggested something beyond revenge. That morning he practiced walking in his Tom Ford suit, the one that made him look like corporate warfare incarnate. I adjusted his posture, our bodies close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something sharp like determination made into scent. Margaret watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable but somehow approving. Patricia Coleman arrived the next day with 3 associates, transforming the dining room into a legal battlefield. She was 60-something with silver hair and eyes that had seen corporate criminals crumble. Her team spread documents across the table like battle plans, dissecting every vulnerability in the Pemberton's attack. Dr. Morris violated HIPAA at minimum 6 times, Patricia noted, highlighting passages. Victoria's stock movements constitute insider trading. And Marcus, this attempted theft is so blatant it's almost insulting. Can we prove intent? I asked. Patricia smiled like a shark scenting blood. With what you've gathered, I could prove intent, conspiracy, and attempted corporate murder. Metaphorically speaking. When she asked about my relationship to the case, Nathaniel answered before I could. She's my partner in this. The word partner hung in the air with multiple meanings. Patricia studied us both, then nodded. Good. Unified front. They won't expect that. We spent days rehearsing the confrontation. Nathaniel practiced his boardroom entrance repeatedly, each attempt stronger. I played different board members, throwing objections that he countered with surgical precision. He memorized every legal statute Patricia provided, practiced revealing evidence in sequence for maximum impact. On the 10th walkthrough he stumbled slightly. I caught him instinctively, our faces suddenly close enough to share breath. "You won't be there to catch me in the actual meeting," he said softly. "Yes, I will," I replied, and we both understood I meant more than physical support. The night before the board meeting, sleep was impossible. I wandered the mansion's halls like a ghost, eventually finding the door to Nathaniel's private terrace open. He stood at the railing, actually stood, looking over city lights that tomorrow might witness his resurrection or destruction. "You should be resting," I said. "So should you." I joined him at the railing, the city spreading below us like a circuit board. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the day they assumed I was finished." He turned to me. "The real question is, are you ready to face him, William?" Tomorrow I'd see him again, watch him lie again, but this time I wouldn't be the one destroyed. "I'm ready." "Tell me something," Nathaniel said. "Why didn't you run when you saw me walking that first night?" "Because I recognized the look in your eyes. The same one I had packing my life into boxes. We were both hiding our capability, pretending to be broken so no one would expect anything from us. And now we stop pretending." He studied my face in the terrace lighting. "After tomorrow things will be different. Everything's already different." He told me about the accident then, the months of darkness before I arrived, how my refusal to pity him had saved something he thought was dead. I told him about foster care, about building walls Dorothy had slowly dismantled, about thinking William was my chance at belonging somewhere. "You belong here," he said simply. When he kissed me it wasn't passionate or desperate. It was deliberate, calculated, like everything else we'd planned. Tasted like redemption and revenge mixed into something entirely new. Tomorrow we would walk into that boardroom and destroy the people who'd tried to destroy us. But tonight, on this terrace above the sleeping city, we were just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage. The morning air outside Blackwood Industries headquarters felt electric against my skin as we stepped from the car. Nathaniel paused at the building's entrance, adjusting his Tom Ford suit one final time. His cane, polished mahogany with a silver handle, wasn't for show anymore. It was a weapon and he wielded it like one. "Ready?" I asked, holding his portfolio of evidence. "I've been ready for months," he replied, then looked at me directly. "Stay close. I want them to see you." The elevator ride to the 40th floor lasted seconds that felt like hours. Other passengers stepped aside instinctively, sensing something predatory in Nathaniel's bearing. When the doors opened to the executive floor, the receptionist's eyes widened. She'd been told Nathaniel Blackwood would arrive in a wheelchair, assisted, diminished. Instead, he strode past her desk with measured steps, each placement of his cane against marble echoing through the hallway like a countdown. The boardroom doors were already open. Inside, 12 board members sat around the massive oval table, with Marcus Pemberton positioned at what should have been Nathaniel's seat. Victoria perched beside him in midnight blue, diamonds at her throat. William sat to her left, medical files spread before him like props in a play he didn't know had already ended. The collective gasp when Nathaniel walked through those doors was audible. Marcus Pemberton's face drained of color so quickly I thought he might faint. Victoria's perfect composure cracked, her hand flying to her throat. But it was William's reaction that fed my soul. He actually started to stand as if to run before his legs gave out and he collapsed back into his chair. Nathaniel walked the length of the room with deliberate precision, his cane striking marble in rhythm with my heartbeat. He didn't hurry, didn't rush. He let them absorb every step, every impossible movement of his supposedly paralyzed body. When he reached the chairman's position, he remained standing. "Gentlemen, ladies," he said, voice carrying perfect authority, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my capacity." The way he emphasized capacity, while looking directly at William, made my ex-fiancé shrink into his expensive suit. I took my position beside Nathaniel, placing the portfolio on the table with deliberate weight. "You're walking," Marcus finally managed, his voice strangled. "Astute observation," Nathaniel replied, lowering himself into his chair with controlled grace. "Though according to Dr. Morris's medical assessment, that should be impossible. Isn't that right, doctor?" William's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "The reports. Your paralysis was documented." "By you," Nathaniel interrupted. "Based on confidential medical information you were never authorized to access, much less share with outside parties." He opened the portfolio, pulling out the first set of documents. "Shall we discuss your communications with Ms. Pemberton? These emails date back 4 months. Interesting how they predate your official consultation by 2 months." I watched Victoria's face as Nathaniel read selected passages aloud. Her romance with William, their plan to eliminate obstacles, the timeline that proved my abandonment was orchestrated. Each word stripped away her polish until only panic remained. "This proves nothing," Marcus blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. "No." Nathaniel pulled out more documents. "Then let's discuss the shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands, prepared to receive my patent transfers. Or perhaps we should review the stock movements that coincidentally aligned with Dr. Morris's false medical reports." Patricia Coleman stood then, her presence commanding attention. "What Mr. Blackwood is presenting constitutes evidence of conspiracy, corporate espionage, HIPAA violations, insider trading, and attempted theft of intellectual property." "You can't prove intent," Marcus said desperately. Nathaniel smiled, cold and sharp. "Actually, I can." He pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen. Marcus's voice filled the room from the speakers. "He's too broken to fight back. The board will side with active leadership. The crippled genius is ripe for harvesting." The recording continued, capturing their entire conversation from that morning in the mansion, every damning word preserved by the security system they dismissed as another sign of Nathaniel's paranoia. "Recording without consent is illegal," Victoria said, her voice shaking. "Not in my own home," Nathaniel replied smoothly. And not when it captures conspiracy to commit fraud. This was my moment. William had been avoiding my eyes, but now he looked up, desperate, trying to form words that might salvage something. Linda, you don't understand the full picture. I stood slowly, placing my hands flat on the table, feeling the cool wood beneath my palms. I understand perfectly. You violated your medical oath, betrayed your patient's confidentiality, and destroyed our relationship to climb into bed with the Pembertons. Victoria's sharp intake of breath confirmed what I'd suspected. They weren't just professional partners. Professionally and literally, it seems, I continued, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. You traded me for an alliance that's now worthless. How does it feel to be the one abandoned? The board members shifted uncomfortably. Several were already whispering to each other, distancing themselves from the Pembertons' sinking ship. This is ridiculous. Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the floor. We're leaving. Sit down, Nathaniel commanded, and the authority in his voice was absolute. Patricia. Patricia Coleman stepped forward, her briefcase opening with a click that sounded like a trap springing. Mr. Pemberton, you have two options. Option 1. Immediate withdrawal of all claims on Blackwood Industries, signed agreements barring any future contact with Mr. Blackwood or his companies, and your resignation from the hospital board. Option 2. We proceed with criminal charges. Criminal charges? William's voice cracked. Corporate espionage, HIPAA violations, attempted theft of intellectual property, insider trading, Patricia listed calmly. The FBI's white-collar crime division has already been briefed, pending the outcome of this meeting. You wouldn't dare, Victoria said, but her voice was hollow. I would, Nathaniel replied. Unless you sign these documents now. The boardroom fell silent except for the scratch of pens on paper. One by one they signed. Marcus's hand shaking with rage, Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers trembling, William signing his name like he was signing his own death certificate. As they filed out, broken and defeated, William lingered at the door. This isn't over, he said quietly, trying for menace but achieving only desperation. I met his eyes one last time. Yes, it is. You ended it 3 weeks ago. I'm just returning the favor. The boardroom door clicked shut behind William, leaving Nathaniel and me alone with the board members who sat in stunned silence. The aftermath of destruction often feels hollow, but this felt like breathing clean air after years of suffocation. Nathaniel remained seated, his hand finding mine beneath the table, fingers interlacing with quiet certainty. Gentlemen, ladies, he addressed the remaining board members, I believe we have a company to rebuild. The vote to reinstate his full authority was unanimous. No one wanted to be associated with the Pembertons' failed coup. As the board members filed out, murmuring apologies and assurances of support, Nathaniel's attorney Patricia Coleman approached us with a satisfied smile. The Pembertons' assets are already being frozen pending investigation, she said. William Morris won't practice medicine in this state again. Maybe not anywhere. The words should have brought satisfaction, but I felt only a strange emptiness where my anger had lived. Nathaniel seemed to sense it, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Come with me, he said once Patricia left. There's something I want to show you. His office overlooked the entire city, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a view that made the world feel conquerable. But it wasn't the view he wanted to show me. From his desk drawer he pulled out architectural plans, spreading them across the surface where minutes ago we'd destroyed our enemies. The east wing of the estate, he said, pointing to the blueprints. 12,000 square feet currently unused. I want to transform it into something that matters. The plans showed a rehabilitation center, state-of-the-art equipment, treatment rooms, therapeutic pools. But it was the name at the top that stopped my breathing. The Blackwood Carter Rehabilitation Center. Your spinal cord stimulation technology, I whispered, understanding flooding through me. You want to make it available to patients who can't afford traditional treatment. I want to make it available to everyone, he corrected. But I need someone to run the clinical side. Someone who understands that recovery isn't just about the body, but about refusing to let circumstances define you. He slid a velvet box across the desk. My hands trembled as I opened it, expecting jewelry, finding instead a simple silver key. Full partnership, he said. Equity stake. Your name on the door beside mine. You'll run the clinical operations while I handle the technology development. Nathaniel, I'm not qualified for this. I'm just a nurse. You're the only one who saw me when I was invisible, he interrupted, his voice fierce. You stayed when everyone else would have run. You understood what I needed when I didn't even know myself. That's all the qualification I need. The key weighed nothing in my palm, but it felt like holding my entire future. Not the future I'd planned with William, safe and predictable, but something I'd never dared imagine. Yes, I said, and his smile transformed his entire face. 6 months passed in a blur of construction, hiring, equipment installation. The center took shape like a dream becoming solid, each room designed for dignity, hope, recovery. Dorothy Martinez had been my first hire, bringing her decades of experience to head our patient advocacy program. She'd cried when I offered her the position, saying she always knew I was meant for something extraordinary. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew medical professionals from across the country. I stood beside Nathaniel, who now walked with only the slightest limp, scissors poised over the silver ribbon. The crowd included reporters, doctors, potential donors, but my eyes found Dorothy in the front row, beaming with pride. The Blackwood Carter Rehabilitation Center represents more than medical innovation, Nathaniel addressed the crowd. It represents the belief that our worst moments don't define us. That from destruction we can build something beautiful. His hand found mine as we cut the ribbon together. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. That morning's newspaper sat in my office, William and Victoria's wedding announcement tucked into the society pages. A small, rushed affair at a courthouse, the article mentioned, after the Pemberton fortune evaporated in legal fees and frozen assets. Victoria had learned too late that William's loyalty was always negotiable, always for sale to the highest bidder. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just a mild pity for Victoria, who'd thought she was trading up. You've become who you were meant to be, Dorothy whispered when she hugged me after my speech, and I believed her. Our first patient arrived that afternoon, a 22-year-old motorcycle accident victim named Jamie. Watching Nathaniel work with her, explaining the technology he'd developed, showing her the possible futures ahead, I saw the man he'd been before his accident. Brilliant, passionate, changing lives with his mind and determination. 3 weeks later, on a sunset walk along the private beach below the estate, Nathaniel stopped where the waves met the sand. The October air was cool, autumn painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. He pulled a small box from his pocket and my heart stuttered. I'm not asking you to marry me because I need you, he said, opening it to reveal a simple sapphire ring, nothing like William's grandmother's heirloom that had felt like a shackle. I'm asking because I've learned that the best revenge against those who tried to break us is to build something they could never imagine, never touch, never be. Build it with me, Linda. Not from desperation or convenience, but from choice. I took the ring myself, sliding it onto my finger where it fit perfectly. When I kissed him, the ocean was our only witness, waves erasing our footprints as we walked back, leaving no trace of where we'd been, only where we were going. A month later, standing in our facility, I watched Nathaniel help Jamie take her first unassisted steps. Her parents wept openly, her younger sister recording everything on her phone. This was what we'd built from our mutual destruction. Not just a rehabilitation center, but a place where broken people could discover they were never really broken at all. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The preview showed William's name, words about mistakes and wanting to talk. I deleted it without reading the rest, then took Nathaniel's hand as our next patient arrived. We'd both been destroyed by people who thought we were disposable. William had thrown me away for a better opportunity. The Pembertons had tried to bury Nathaniel while he was still breathing. But from that wreckage we'd built something neither of us could have achieved whole. A love born from revenge but transformed into purpose, into healing, into something that belonged only to us. If this story of calculated revenge and unexpected love kept you hooked until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Linda stood in that boardroom and told William exactly how it felt to be the one abandoned. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more captivating stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.